Hey everyone, my name is KryptoCal, and welcome to the next episode of FTB Skies. In between episodes, the main thing that I did was I readjusted how our ore processing setup works. And the reason for that was the major cause of lag in our world was because of the create mod setup here, and not because of the sifters, it was because of the way that I was handling all the raw materials. Essentially what was happening was I was dumping a bunch of entities into the world, and even though I did make sure that it was only coming out in stacks at a time, that would still make it so there was lots of stacks of items constantly on the floor waiting to be smelted. So to solve that, I essentially just hooked up a couple of these logic cables. What's essentially happening here is I am sorting out all the items out of here by using these variable cards with a list filter. And the way that I actually went ahead and did this, I'll show you really quick, is I took one variable card out here, you place it inside, and you can come down to list, and then I manually went in and added each of these raw materials to our list just like so. So by doing this, you can come in here, click the plus button, and it adds one to the count of the list. So effectively, you're basically adding items to this overall list, which will then basically list all these raw materials to then either get sorted into the diamond barrel, which will then be basically our diamonds, our coal, the things that don't need to be smelted will go into the diamond barrel, and everything else goes into our ender chest. And that's all done using the logic programmer, which is really cool. ID is a really complex mod, but it can really help with some of these tasks, and these are very, very lag efficient compared to the max upgrades of these item pipes. But on the other end, we have to, of course, now smelt those items that weren't being smelted before. And we're doing that down here in our setup underground, where we have our automated pedestal, but I'm actually not using the pedestal to do the smelting. I ended up replacing the two pattern providers I had underground here with two of these smelting factories. And you can see underneath here, I have the exact same setup where I have the same set magenta ender chest that is importing all items. It doesn't really matter where they're importing because all they're doing is going into a smelter. So we're now importing all the items into the smelter to then be smelted and put back into our system. Because we have a large variety of raw materials coming in, the pedestal can only smelt one type of item at a time. And there appears to be a bit of a delay with the pedestal when it switches between different items. So the problem is it just wasn't keeping up, even though overall the pedestal is a much faster smelter than the smelting factory. It just wasn't able to keep up with the sheer amount of quantity of items of the different types of items that we have coming in. So I had to use the ultimate smelting factories instead. I'm still keeping the pedestal for all of our automated smelting tasks, but because this is very quick at smelting single types of items. The other thing that I changed was I actually made it so that the raw uranium specifically is not being smelted by the smelters, and it's actually coming in via the ender chest like the diamonds are. So it's coming right into our system, and I have a drawer set up to just take the raw uranium. We're going to need a lot of uranium going forward because we're going to need a lot of it for some of the mechanism stuff and producing fissile fuel. And the way we're probably going to do that is by using either mechanism or industrial foregoing to duplicate this ore. Now, mechanism does have a pretty good way of doing this using the sulfuric acid. So effectively by doing this, we're turning 3 raw uranium into 10 of the uranium ingots if we get to the very end here, which is not too bad. Or tripling is not terrible, But I think there is a better option, and that is actually going to be using the washing factory. Because we already have liquid meat coming into our system, that shouldn't be a problem to actually use to duplicate our raw uranium. And what we can do is basically turn 1 raw uranium into 100 millibuckets of this special raw ore meat, which will then go into the fermentation station, which is effectively 5 timesing our initial input. And then once we have the 500 millibuckets, we can take that and sieve it with some sand to produce the dust. Now, to get the 5 times processing, I believe we do have to use ether gas. Yeah, I believe we're going to have to get the ether gas to get the maximum rates out of that. Another alternative is 3 or 4 times, and it actually uses pink slime. Now, we have a decent pink slime production here, and we can actually speed this up by increasing the spawner speed if we really want to. I think for now, it might be a good idea if we try and get ourselves set up with some processing of certain types of ore, like their uranium. So we have to get a washing factory. We also have to get a fermentation station, and then also a fluid sieving machine. It's a 3-machine process, and then you have to smelt the resulting product at the end. If we just break out some of these trap doors over here, all we need to do is break out an area for us to come in here and use. All right, let's go ahead and put our washing factory on autocraft. Most of the things here are already on autocraft. All we need to get is the meat feeder. So let's go ahead and grab that really quick. And I think we have plenty of glass bottles, so we'll grab this recipe as well. We also need to get to the fermentation station, and then we also have to get the fluid sieving machine. Oh, I also went ahead and added a second set of the crafting towers here because we were running out of space, and we're going to need to get some more autocrafts going very shortly. So I figured we might as well plan ahead and get 2 more of the towers set up. So I think this should be probably enough storage for crafting for the rest of the playthrough. I'm not 100% sure, but if we come in here and take a look at our access terminal, we have absolute ton of crafting storage now. This ore setup is actually really nice because it's very easy to make compact. So for example, if I set it up top here, we're going to have a washing station, then it's going to ferment it, and then it's going to fluid sieve it. So if we have everything pushing to the right here, we can go and set our speed upgrades in here later, but we're going to want to have the input come in from the left. We want to seal when full, so we want to fill the entire fluid tank up and then seal it to do the processing. And here is where we can choose what level of production we want. So to do the 2 times multiplication, it actually requires no catalyst at all, which is just free 2 times or doubling. Same with the 3 times, it's no catalyst required, but it just takes quite a bit longer. It's 45 seconds instead of the 5 seconds. The 4 times requires 120 seconds and also some pink slime. So that is going to be something that we're going to have to insert extra to make this happen, which is actually not terrible. The 5 times is obviously 300 seconds and it takes ether gas. But I think for now, we could probably go ahead and get the pink slime going and then upgrade to the ether gas once we have that coming in. Now, this is where we can actually make use of the interfaces, I think, to effectively send and receive the items. Now, we have to keep in mind that all of these require power to run, so we're going to have to find a way to give these power as well. But for now, let's go ahead and just put maybe the interface on the back. We're going to want to hook these in, so let's bring our cable up just to the interface to make it go online. And we want to insert uranium and liquid meat. So that shouldn't be too hard to set up. If we come in here and say uranium, we want the raw uranium. And we can choose how much to keep in stock here. We can say a full stack should be good. And hopefully this will also work with the liquid meat. I'm not 100% sure, but let's go and give it a try. Did this actually, oh, it is taking it in. Perfect. So we can actually go ahead and just change this to keep a certain amount in stock. We can say 4 buckets of it. And once this gets power, it'll start producing the uranium meat. Next up, this requires the pink slime. So what we can do with the pink slime here is basically the exact same thing. We can just put a interface on the back here, set this to keep 4 buckets in stock, and then we want to essentially pull the catalyst in from the back, just like so. And then finally, we're going to have to add a interface on the back here, where we're going to now send sand into our system. So our sand's going to come in from the back. We'll keep a stack of it in, so that is going to fill it up nice and quick. So we're effectively all ready to go. Let's go ahead and add some of the add-ons, and we're also going to so now we have to get this a little bit of power, and these are using 3 channels here total. So effectively we can run a couple more off of this one line, but then we can also branch off of this line here. So if we want to add more of these in the future, we can. And just a quick little modular router power setup later. And this is starting to produce the liquid uranium meat. And all of our add-ons are in. And let's see, are we basically fill up on the liquid meat? We are. And this is starting to process. This is actually only using 40 Fe per tick, so this is actually not too bad at all. 60 here, and this is only 40 as well. So once this is finished, this whole batch of raw meat should go into the output here and go into our fluid sieving machine. And there we go. Now we're pumping out all of the fermented ore meat here into uranium dust. I could send this uranium dust into our system, or I could find a way to smelt it right here and then insert it back into the system. So I'll give that a think for a sec. Now, uranium in this pack doesn't really have many other purposes besides just being enriched into the yellow cake uranium, which is used to create a product to create fissile fuel. We might end up just setting up a fissile fuel production setup around this area, and then we can just use the uranium dust that's right here to send right into our system. So to smelt this down, we might just add a smelter, an energized smelter from Mechanism again, because it's going to be the easiest, I think, just to keep nice and clean on the wall. So then if we take our output from the uranium and say to go out the bottom, that should start to run the energized smelter once it obviously has some power. So let's upgrade our energized smelter really quick with all the upgrades that we need. So this just needs some power. Let's get it to auto sort, adding the energized smelter, and that should hopefully keep it powered. But that is effectively then smelting all of our uranium out just like this. And then we can export it out the back using either a pipe or something. If we actually give this a little bit more breathing room in the back by just bringing the pipe out by one, we can actually put in the enrichment chamber right here, which will effectively do exactly what we needed to. If we just take an enrichment chamber out, we should have one already. Place it here. We can auto output everything instead of to the back to the left. And as long as we're inputting from the left or from the right here, and outputting the back. This way, it'll automatically enrich all of our uranium into the yellow cake uranium. I think what I'll do now is just add one more washing factory in here. I know the washing factory can probably support 2 or maybe even 3 fermentation stations, but I figure that if we have just 2 of these running at a time, that hopefully will keep up with our uranium input. That's kind of my main goal, is to make sure that our uranium input is kind of similar to what we're outputting in terms of the uranium cake uranium, because we don't want excess uranium building up for no reason. We would rather have it all turned into the cake uranium. So all I have to do now is grab our last washing station out of here, place that down. We just want to run this just like so, and we want to extract out of here. And we're going to extract out of here just like this. We'll maybe give it 1 pipe upgrade, just a small one, like a gold one is probably fine. And that should be providing it with the uranium and liquid meat once again. Yeah, so I think what we're going to do is just take a drawer here and just have this be our output of the farm. But I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of the yellow cake uranium just to set a filter. All right, so that is set up there nicely. And this should just, if we set this to output here, we should start filling up all the uranium. And this should just keep doing its thing, which is awesome. Now, the one thing I do have to make sure, though, is I just manage how much pink slime and how much liquid meat we're actually using as this is constantly running, because I don't want to run out. That would be not a good thing to have happen. So there's a chance that we have to go ahead and maybe even add a second spawner in here that is going to be good for liquid meat and for pink slime. And now that I think about it, I could probably just make this cobblestone here a spawner instead, and have like a, I don't know, zombie villager in there. All right, let's just go ahead and set this up now. So let's put the zombie spawner in here instead. And then if we just put the redstone link on the actual spawner, and I had the liquid meat running a little bit faster at the spawner, a little bit faster than the pink slime, because I think we need more of the meat than the slime. So that should be good. But yeah, I just want to make sure that this is taken care of. We have already 5.7 thousand of this. And our raw uranium, I believe, is draining quite a bit. So I think we are more than sufficient here for the speed of our uranium coming in. All right, so our end goal is to get to fissile fuel, because fissile fuel is what we're going to need to basically have access to start producing antimatter using the mechanism reactor. And I'm hoping we can fit the fissile fuel setup in this area right here, which it should be doable. It's a little harder to do vertically. It's a bit of a convoluted setup, but I'm hoping it should be doable. So I'm going to probably start by doing where I want the fissile fuel to be coming out to before we start adding all the machines around, because it'll make it easier to know where we want everything to come to start. So to start off, we have to craft up this isotropic centrifuge. One isotropic centrifuge can produce 256 millibuckets of fissile fuel per tick. So as long as we can support that, I think that'll be the rate that we're going to aim for this. So my idea is that we're going to have a nice wall to look at into the system to see how epic this monstrosity is going to become. And I want to have like some nice glass in here to take a look inside. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is have our isotropic centrifuge sitting somewhere like here. I think that is the goal, is to have all the fissile fuel coming into one quantum entangloporter here to then be moved to a different area. Let's make one entangloporter just for now, just to set it up so we know where we're putting all the fissile fuel. And the quantum entangloporter basically acts as a way to send a whole bunch of different stuff wirelessly across dimensions. So you can go in here and we have to set a channel for this. I'm going to call this fissile fuel, and we're going to go ahead and hit check, and that is now a public server. You can have this, if you're on a server, you can have a private one as well, so that no one can access your channels on here. But because we're on a single player, it's not a big deal. But yeah, so this will now hopefully accept the fissile fuel from our centrifuge once it's done. So to make the fissile fuel, we have to get some uranium hexafluoride, which takes some of the uranium oxide and hydrofluoric acid. So we're going to start with the uranium oxide because this will be the easiest one for now. All we have to do is turn some yellow cake uranium, which we have plenty of, into the uranium oxide inside of this chemical oxidizer. And we're probably going to want a few of these, maybe like 4 or 5. So I'm going to go ahead and set those on autocraft as well. Actually, I'll probably go ahead and set up all the autocrafts for all of the machines we're going to need, because it'll just make it way easier to go ahead and streamline the whole process. So let's just go ahead and add all of these recipes here. All right, I think this should be pretty much all the stuff we're going to need for this setup. Maybe a couple things here and there, but that shouldn't be too difficult to get crafted up if we need them. So that should be fine. And I haven't planned out the setup at all, so I'm really just going to be winging this. But let's go ahead and get our oxidizers out. So let's get 5 of these to start. You might as well put all of our oxidizers right here. So these have to get some power and also some yellow cake uranium. So what we're going to go ahead and do is probably just come back here. All we should have to do is now get ourselves a variable card, place the importer on the left here. We're going to hook in the logic cables, and we're going to want to place import all items, and we want to make this nice and quick. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the item transfer rate to 256. So all we're going to have to do is set the item inputs to the left, and then the gases, I believe, are what we're going to send out to the right. And then we're just going to go ahead and place the item interfaces here, hook them all up together with a logic cable. And that, I think, should start to work, which it does. Yeah, they all immediately have enough yellow cake uranium, which is fantastic. Power we could probably do by using a modular router, just by sending power to all of them. We have the uranium oxide. It has to come into a chemical infuser. So I want to make a chemical infuser really quick here, which should be very straightforward. If I place it down right here, I'm not sure if the centrifuge can accept gas from the top, and it appears that we can't, yeah, it doesn't accept from the top, which is a bummer. So we're gonna have to kind of run this around the sides, just like this. So if I take gases and input from the left and right, that should work. And then the chemical infuser has to now output the gas from the bottom. That's not the most space efficient version, but that will do okay. I obviously only have to hook it into one side, but for, symmetry, it looks nicer. And now that I think about it, I might actually add the power as I go, because I realize that I need to make sure that everything is working properly as I'm going. So let's just make a few items here. Oh, we're missing a distributor module. Now it works. Okay, well, that's weird. Anyway, let's get some distribution modules here. And we're also going to want to get some energy upgrades. I'll probably just place the modular router in the floor here, just like this. So let's grab one distribution module. Let's just select all of our oxidizers here. And we can also probably select the centrifuge. There we go. And also the infuser. And I think that should send power to all of them. Power out. And that is unbearably loud. So we're going to want to muffle probably most of the sounds coming out of here. I also want to muffle the actual router so I don't see those lasers. All right, enough. Quiet. There we go. So loud. Okay, so that's good. Everything's fine. They're getting power and they are producing the uranium oxide, which is fantastic. Speed and speed. Okay, so these are all fully upgraded. Now we have to get the uranium oxide into the infuser. And I think the way we're going to do that is probably just by using also some more pipes, and they won't connect in. Well, they shouldn't connect in here, which I don't want them to do. We only want them to go right into here. We don't want to mix with the pressurized tube here. So all I should have to do is set the extracts on these, and that should start putting the uranium oxide in here. All right, that's the easy part taken care of. Now it's time for the harder part. We need to get some hydrofluoric acid, which is going to be a chemical dissolution chamber. And the chemical dissolution chamber needs an input of fluorite. So we're going to grab one of these out. As long as we have this somewhere around here, we should be able to just pipe the gas directly in. And I am going to use the pressurized tube here. And we want to accept the other input in from gas, just like that. Probably going to input the other gas on the top, and then probably going to have an item input on the bottom. But what we're going to have to do then is run up a cable from our system here. And we are at 10 out of 32 being used on this side so far, so not a huge deal. So all we should have to do is run our cabling up and then just set an item exporter here. All right, fluorite needs to be exported, and that is going in. Sulfuric acid is made in a chemical infuser using water vapor and sulfur trioxide. So all we should have to do then is grab another chemical infuser out to make the sulfuric acid. We can place this down right here. Then we can run our cabling up. What we're going to do is put one of the condensators right there. This will take care of our water vapor. This export bus is going to be exporting water actually. So we need to go and set the water to export out of our system. And it's going to turn into water vapor and go into the infuser. All right, we're caught up to this point. We have everything upgraded. Now we have to do is get the sulfur trioxide, which is another chemical infuser with the sulfur dioxide and oxygen. And we're going to actually put this one right beside because it doesn't need to be far away. Gas, we want to set an output to the right, one input on the top and one from the left. So in thinking about this, I'm going to need to add water to a couple of different things. So maybe what we'll do is we'll actually move the condensator and have it input the water vapor from the front. And then we'll move this to be right here. And then we'll throw in the exporter on the side here, which will then export the water. Now we could run this cable up here and actually send it into another place that we're going to need it to go. And that's going to be into our chemical infuser. But I'm going to also run it over and along here. We also have to make sure we have an export for the sulfur dioxide, which I think takes some sulfur. So we're going to make sure we're exporting that as well. So we need to have an electrolytic separator in between here. So let's go ahead and grab one of these out. We'll place it down just like this. We want to make sure that the oxygen is set on idle and the hydrogen is set on dumping excess. So it always is running if it needs oxygen. So now we have oxygen being put right into the infuser. So that should start producing the trioxide once we have the sulfur dioxide, which just requires some more chemical oxidizers with sulfur dust. Now currently we have 74,000 sulfur in our system because we are producing sulfur from our sifting setup here by sifting the dust. We have to then take the sulfur and I believe crush it down to make the proper dust here. We're going to place the crusher probably somewhere right here. So we can actually place an export bus right on the side here. Set this to be sulfur. Give it some acceleration cards and that will start to, assuming we have this set up correctly, input the sulfur to start crushing down. And there we go. This is producing sulfur at a good rate, which we're then going to go ahead and use to put into our chemical oxidizers. And I'm not sure how many of these we're going to actually want right off the bat. Let's just go ahead and set up 3 like this. This isn't going to be the most pretty here, but if we go ahead and connect all this up, let's just disconnect this. And we want to set all of these to have the gas output be the bottom. We should just be able to go ahead and just set up our pipe like this. And then we can throw a relatively fast pipe upgrade into this one. And obviously we need to get the upgrades into these. All right, and these are working away at a very good pace, and they are starting to produce sulfur dioxide, which is turning into sulfur trioxide. Sulfur trioxide is then being combined over here into the sulfuric acid, which actually has nowhere to go because we haven't hooked up a pipe yet for it. So let's go and throw a pipe down here. Let's just make sure that our output of the gas is correct, which it is. And that is now producing the hydrofluoric acid. So if we're actually doing this correctly, the uranium oxide should be our limiting factor, I believe, in terms of our speed of these oxidizers. So I think this is producing at a rate of 256. It randomly will drop a little bit lower for some reason, but I think the power here should be sufficient, but we're using an absolute ton of power with this setup, so we might have to find a different power solution soon. But all in all, this is not the most compact, obviously. Now it's a kind of more of a showpiece. We can walk in and we can cover this up in glass maybe, and it'll be kind of a cool thing to look at when we come into our base. All right, so let me just go ahead and tidy this up a little bit, make it look a little nicer, and I'll be right back. You notice that our bottleneck here, that's the reason this isn't actually producing at a full 256, is we are kind of low on the hydrofluoric, and it's because this actually isn't producing fast enough, this dissolution chambers. So what we're gonna wanna do is just basically add some extra pressurized cable here. This is actually a very easy thing to do. And then also add an exporter. We want to add one more export bus for fluorite. Under here, grab some accels out of here, and then all we have to do is just add one more cable up top, and that should start producing, once we set this to be input, the fluorite on the bottom, which is perfect. And then we want to add one more cable out to the side, just like this, which will then just start to push the gas out the left here, which it is, and I hope this will start to keep this producing a little more effectively. It's going a little faster now, so hopefully this will start to see this tick up very slowly but surely, and it looks like it's keeping its buffer, so that means that this should be completely always running at 256 millibuckets per tick. And I'm actually going to try and use some of this mana glass panes. I think they look really cool, and they actually give off light, so it actually looks really neat when you have all of them together. There we go. I think that looks pretty cool. You can tell that there's definitely something here, but it's kind of subtle, and it does give off quite a bit of light, so it's really nice looking. But I think that's a good place to wrap up this episode of FTB Skies. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to join the Discord. The link is in the description down below. But that's going to be it for me, everybody. I hope you all have a good one, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye!